Well, now it's September 10th, and the day later from after interviewing the two of you individually, and this is my favorite part where I get to get your stories together. So Betty and Buck, tell me how you met.
Well, when I came back from my trip across the country with the two girls, we settled in with my folks. And of course the older girl had to go to school, so my mother took her up to the schoolhouse and introduced her to the teacher. And the teacher happened to be her, and she had a roommate, how shall we say it, a whole lot different. And my mother said, if you were ever to pick a wife, I would take Betty over the other one. She said, that's what I would do. And I said, well, I'm not looking for any wife. You better help me out here because I don't remember how I happened to be up there.
Well, you brought her to school sometimes. During the week, she would come on the school bus, but I guess she would spend the weekends at home, and then on Monday morning, you would bring her to school. I was the first and second grade teacher. My roommate was the third and fourth grade teacher. That was Harriet Eccles, was her name. And the second week of school, Eileen asked me if I didn't want to be her mother. Well, that was a little bit, I don't remember now just how I got around that one.
That was a little bit heavy, wasn't it?
Rather direct, I'd say.
But like I said, sometimes he would bring her to school. Now his story is that I would go hide in the closet. My story is that I had to go to the closet to get supplies.
That sounded good.
Anyway, that's what happened for a while.
So in other words, you all never really saw each other when he was,
No.
You would just kind of exit when he would come up.
He was just the father of one of my students.
And you were busy in a classroom with all these little ones.
I had a room full of first and second graders to teach, and so I was busy.
So when did the ice break here? When did you all actually get to?
Well, the older daughter, she said she wanted her to be her mother, but nothing happened, so she told all the kids on the school bus that we were getting married.
And
talk about a little matchmaker.
And the fifth and sixth grade teacher, of course, that was juicy gossip to the fifth and sixth
Yes,
graders.
indeed.
So she came and told me, what Eileen had done. So then I had to talk to him, let him know you asked her why she said that. And she said, well, I wanted it to happen, so I thought maybe if I said it, it would happen. But they would, in the gym there, they would have Saturday night programs of different types. And he would come and bring the girls. The younger sister, Ellen, was 5 then. And she would sit on my lap and hug me and kiss me and comb my hair.
Oh my goodness. How could you? I can't see. I think this was all, this was decided on before you even knew this guy.
Right. They were just, I guess, thought I should be their mother. But like he said, he wasn't interested in getting married, and I really wasn't interested in him particularly.
I'll get in on this now. It seemed like we just gradually came together because I'd go up and pick up the daughter after school, and my wife was living up there around Camino where there was snow. And one time she says, I don't know how I'm going to get home. I don't know how to put my chains on. So I went down and helped her put the chains on. And from there, we just gradually, and I would do little things to her car that needed fixing. And like a tire or battery or something like that. She got stuck once with a dead battery, so I helped her out. And
I wasn't a mechanic at all. But I think the time that we really began to get together was the time that you were going over to Sonora, Twain Hart, to visit your uncle who lived over there, and your mother invited me to go along, and I had a former teacher who lived over at Sonora, so I thought, well, I'd like to go and see her because she had been my teacher for a couple of years, and I hadn't seen her for quite a while, and she was a family friend. So I thought, well, that would be nice to ride over there. I was sitting in the back seat. Well, the road between Placerville and Sonora, Highway 49, is a pretty curvy road, and I had problems with car sickness. So it wasn't very long, and I was embarrassed, but I had to ask to sit in the front seat because I was getting car sick. So I made it over there. Well, then,
I remember right, I sat just as far away as I could from you.
yes, I think you did. Then we went to church the next day, and I remember it was a small church, and there was a lady that was a greeter out there, and his mother was introducing, this is my son, Celian Adams, and of course I was standing there, and right away the lady turned to me, oh, and is this Mrs. Adams? And we both, I don't know which one of us turned the reddest, but
Yeah.
we were both.
At what point did you all just go on a date?
Well, that afternoon we were at his uncle and aunt's house, and everybody wanted to rest, but Ellen was not interested in resting. I don't know, she was just
She was fussy.
fussy, yes. And he said, I know the way to get her to go to sleep is to take her for a ride in the car. So he said, do you want to go up? What was it?
Strawberry. Yeah.
Was that Highway
88.
88?
Mhm.
Well, I had never been up there, and so we put her in the back seat, and we were in the front, and we drove up to Strawberry, and it was beautiful country up in the mountains, and we were talking. She went to sleep, and it just seemed like we had a lot in common. Somehow that seemed to be when we got together.
Yeah, and our interests seemed to start to come together there because she wanted some ice cream or snow cream, and we went out and gathered a bunch of snow and took it back and made some
Snow ice
snow
cream.
ice cream. And
Oh,
just,
fun.
just gradually.
Yeah. So it was a gradual thing. So how
Just-
long, like
yeah.
from that date, from that trip, before there was a proposal? How
There
long
never was a formal proposal.
Yeah, that's what we can't remember any of being a real proposal.
Uh-huh.
I went home for Easter vacation, and I don't know, I just decided that he was the one for me, and you know, I really can't put it into words.
Well,
So-
a lot of it had to do with how she got along with the girls.
Yeah.
They were just clamoring for some feminine
Mm-hmm.
attention, you know, and
And their own mother lived right here in
Well, this is what I'm
Placerville.
getting at. So it wasn't just that, but it was also how she treated the girls, right? Because
Yeah.
there was something about her that you saw, this is the
Mhm.
right...
so much.
Because you're not only looking for your own heart's needs, you're looking for your kids' needs. That you got a double obligation there, don't you?
You might say that proposal was it's a little bit vague to me, but it seemed like she went over there on spring vacation, and we'd sort of had some kind of understanding that maybe we should be together. It was just kind of casually mentioned, but when she came back, we just seemed to. I think that you're for me and I'm for you, and I think we just kind of got together. And after that, I remember we were at my folks' place downtown, and after we sort of sorted things out of it, she started to go home, and she forgot to turn her lights on her car, and she drove.
I forgot, I was going up to Camino where I was living.
And I thought, oh boy, what have I done to her?
But about a block later, I did turn them on. I was still in town, so, you know, there was street
She came to her
lights.
senses once she got away.
There was street light. Now, there was one thing that happened before we ever got together with, his mother was living out here, and his parents had this ranch, but his sister lived right next to the church that we attended there in town in Placerville, and his father had a studio downstairs where he had his organ because he was an organist, and so that was, when he mentions his first place in town, that's what he's talking about. But there was when one of the other teachers, his mother was a good friend of my mother-in-law, so she invited him and his wife to come out for dinner, and then she invited me too because I was Eileen's teacher. So that was my first trip out over Mosquito Road. But I said, I'll never go over that road again, never dreaming that I would end up living out here.
That's interesting.
That was kind of early on before.
It was.
Yes.
Because we kind of shied away from each other. And I
Right.
didn't want to get involved.
Yeah, you had some scars there that needed to heal, some wounds that needed to heal.
I just didn't want any more.
Uh-huh.
I knew she was a nice lady, but I had no idea that we were going to get together.
No, this was because it was in the fall because the grapes were ripe, remember? Or his mother, it always took her meals were quite a production.
Mm-hmm.
So it took her quite a while to fix a meal, and I mean, they were always worth waiting for, but so I remember he took me out on the porch where the grapes were ripe to give me something to eat while we were waiting for dinner to get ready.
Uh-huh.
But, and this watchmaker, Nova Bradley, he was a single man, and he was a little older, and he invited me to go to Coloma with him, but he said, we'll have to go in your car because my car isn't very good. Well, it just happened that just before that, he had invited me to go to Coloma. So I said, I'm sorry, Nova, somebody else has invited me to go to Coloma, so I went with him instead of with Nova Bradley. And Nova Bradley never married, and he passed away quite a few years ago now.
Mm-hmm. So there was a rivalry there. It was good timing on your part then, right, Buck?
That was good timing.
Yeah. So there's a story that you brought up yesterday that I wrote down about how she got stopped by the police.
I was driving down the main street of Placerville, and there was a school bus stopped, and I looked. I didn't see any flashing lights or anything, so I very slowly passed it and went on. Well, I guess that was Mike Donatly, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
The
Chief of Police.
Chief of Police. He was right handy and pulled me over, and you passed that school bus, didn't you? Yes, I did. I didn't see any lights. Well, you still should have stopped, and I didn't tell him I was a school teacher, but about that time he went by the other direction or something and saw me stop.
Saw you. And probably didn't let you forget it either. Right?
No, to this day he hasn't.
That's right, he hasn't still. That's how I found out about it.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
So back to courting. So you kind of your paths started getting closer and closer together, and then there must have been a decision sometime that you were going to get married.
I can't put my finger on when the decision was made, except when she came back from her vacation over there. It just seemed to be foreseen that we were going to get together. That's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Was it before or after that you went over on your motorcycle to my folks' place? I don't remember just when, but my folks, motorcycles, that wasn't in their vocabulary. And when he goes roaring up in our yard in a motorcycle,
First impression.
that was not, a good impression.
So how did you handle that? How did they communicated maybe this wasn't the ideal selection for you? What did you do?
I can't tell you why I went over there for that was roaring up on a motorcycle. That was a kind of a stupid thing to do.
Hindsight is a great thing, isn't it?
It was under the circumstances. But then later, we went over together, and at that time, this house that my dad was building, it wasn't finished yet, so they were still staying out in their little
trailer thing.
Place where they lived. But my room was finished, and so I would sleep in there. But when we went over together, they wouldn't let him sleep in the house.
Mm.
He had to sleep out on the
On the lawn.
Under the stars.
I mean, I was their little girl, even
That's
though
right.
I
That's
had
right.
graduated from college and taught school for 3 years.
You're always their little
their
girl,
little
no matter
girl.
how old. That's right.
And so they were still very protective of
Sure.
me. And of course, I was 23, which now, 23 looks pretty young, but, I felt like I was pretty grown up at 23 and ready to make my own decisions. And
So I guess you had to tell them that, right?
Was
At
that
some
the,
point.
was that the time that they called in the preacher to try to break things up?
talk us out of getting married.
And
Yeah.
she called in the ministers. He was going to show me the door. But we found out something about the preacher. His home life wasn't too well either.
Well, I knew him because I had lived next door to him for 2 years when I was teaching school, so I knew some things about him that weren't the best.
So he wasn't the best example. Yeah.
So that,
It just fell on deaf ears, didn't it?
it did, I'm afraid.
Uh,
And
That made us want to get together all the more.
there you go. And you did.
We
so
did.
then after school was out that year, he asked me, he said, all right, if the girls call you Betty, because I had been Miss Landstrom. I said, sure, that's fine. So he asked them, you want to call her Betty? And they said, no, we want to call her Mama.
Oh, wow.
And we said, well, better not do that yet, because we weren't married yet.
Mm,
But that was their response.
yeah. Oh, that's lovely. I mean, I just think that's lovely that the little girl is being the matchmaker here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Even today, they said, well, we picked you out, didn't we?
Yeah.
You sure did. Yeah.
And of course, their biological mother passed away a year ago of cancer. So now I always
Yeah. You
have
always
been
have
Mom all along. They've always called me Mom.
been. Uh-huh.
But now I am
So
the
did-
mom because
when you got married, was it a planned ceremony or was it a sudden ceremony? Did you all just, because a lot of times in those days people didn't do elaborate planning.
Absolutely, we had it all planned.
Yeah?
We got in the car with the two girls and we eloped.
Good for you.
We went down to Kingman, Arizona. We took out our marriage papers there. And I had some friends that lived down below Flagstaff. We went down there and dumped the girls off, went up to Flagstaff and got married.
and his aunt and uncle lived in Flagstaff, and a cousin just happened to be visiting. So we went and told them, we want to get married. Will you come and be our witnesses?
Yeah.
And they said, sure, we'd be glad to. And
Nice.
so we got married. We went to the judge, and
And when he said, do you remember? He said, you take this woman to be your wife? And I was eyeing up that window. I'm going to go out.
he was.
He was having second thoughts.
He was wondering if he wanted to do this again.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
a
I saw
scary
him
one.
looking at the window, and is he gonna?
I just knew I was going to jump out and I thought about the girls. I can't do this to them,
It looks like it was the right decision, don't you think? Made the right decision.
Never regret it.
So you got married, and then did your parents know that was going to happen, or did you have to go back and tell them?
We went back and told them.
How did that go?
They were very unhappy.
They weren't happy, but what could they do?
That's right.
I mean, they accepted it because they knew it was our decision, and there really wasn't anything they could do about it. And
These friends of ours, where we left the girls, they lived down in a little valley, and it's probably about 40 miles from Flagstaff, so they were okay. They were out of the picture. It was just her and me. So we gradually got acquainted, and we were living in a hotel. I remember the hotel bill was $5 a day. That was big money in those days.
Ooh.
So we didn't eat in a restaurant. So we packed a lunch and we went out toward the San Francisco mountains with the lunch, and we found a nice spot by the side of the road and pulled out there and got out to eat, and we decided that wasn't a very good place to park. So I backed around a little bit and we bumped into something. I said, uh-oh, looks like we hit that stump back there. We came back here, and then next year we got to thinking about it. You still think it's a rock, don't you? And I thought it was a stump. I happen to know because I saw some wood splinters in the fender when we'd broken the fender, and I knew I was right.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't make a big issue. I said, we better go back and check and see who's right. So we went back and
You wanted an excuse to go back the
That's
next
right.
year.
Go back to the same place.
On our anniversary.
That's cute.
Because on the 4th of July weekend type of thing, they used to have this Indian powwow at Flagstaff. So he had wanted to get married on the 1st of July because he said, my other marriage was in June and that didn't work out too good, so let's get married in July. And then we went to the Indian, actually we went down and picked up the girls then after we were married and brought them back up and went to the Indian powwow. So then the next year we came back to celebrate our first anniversary there, and we checked it out. And of course it was a stump.
But I think
That settled that.
I do think it's pretty interesting that he didn't point out the splinters in the bumper. You know, you knew that even then, but you didn't come back and say, "See what I was right. I was right."
that was my ace in the hole because I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't any big deal.
Oh no, it's just fun. I think that was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you on that. How long have you been married now?
50 some years.
56.
And what works for you to keep harmony in your marriage? Because you're going to have disagreements, some more serious than even that one. How did y'all handle those?
Well, I guess when things get a little bit testy, then I go take a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Or she goes out in the garden or something.
So you get away from each other and cool off.
She's so sure she's right, and I'm sure I'm right, so better just leave it like that until we cool off a bit.
Uh-huh.
We just leave it, you know.
Sometimes even a year, and then you go back and show that it was a stuff.
Sometimes one of us is right, sometimes the other one, and
Yeah, that's nice.
so be it.
It's no big deal.
But some people thought, including my son, he says, here you were a college graduate and a teacher, and then you come out and start logging. Well, you know, I told him when we got married, I said, we're a team, and I'll help you wherever I can. And
Well, let's talk about that. So what did you do? You helped him with logging?
at first, I would go out with him when he would do his logging, and he seems like he would spend hours taking a chainsaw apart and putting it back together, and there really wasn't much I could do to help. But then pretty soon it seemed like there were things I could do to help. I don't remember just what, except when we used the 2-man saw. Of course that was a bigger saw, but
We had a chainsaw with a 4-foot bar on it. And I would handle that by myself, and I guess she felt sorry for him. From there on, that was her downfall.
She was put to work, huh?
She was put to work.
Yeah.
Hardly over.
no, that's what I told him, you know, we're a team, and if I can help, well, I'd be glad to help.
So you moved here, and now you've got instant family, 2 little girls calling you mom.
We lived with his folks out here right after we were married.
For just a little while, then we got a trailer.
A little trailer and parked it out next to the house that he had lived in with his first wife. And it was kind of, I guess she had just taken what she wanted and left everything else. It was kind of in a mess. But, you know, after we lived out there for a while, I said, well, you know, it doesn't really make sense us living in this little trailer. Why don't we pick up the house and move in there? I said, well, I was hoping you'd want to do that, but he didn't want
Well, yeah, that was very considerate of you, though.
So it worked out pretty good. We lived out here for several years, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, we were living out here when Freddie was born.
Speaking of Freddie, that brings up another one when he was little. Something about runaway cars.
Oh,
That's way back when we were logging down where Cameron Park is now. Well, that was all just
pasture.
pasture with trees. And Larry Cameron, who had a automobile agency in Sacramento, owned it, and there was trees needed to be cut down. So he made an agreement with him, and now Freddie was a little over a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a little trailer down there and stayed down there. And I guess you were there and I had gone into town or something.
I stayed in the trailer overnight and you came out the next morning.
And so I had to come down, open a gate and go through, and then close and go through the field. Well, Freddie was asleep on the front seat. So I came down and stopped the car, opened the gate, and then the car started rolling. It wasn't a very steep incline, but just enough that the car started rolling.
I just headed for a big arroyo down there.
There was a ditch down a little farther. And about that time, Freddie wakes up and stands up on the seat, see what's going on.
Where are we going?
Oh no, But I ran, and I don't know, I guess angels or something kind of turned the wheel, so it stopped the car before it got to the ditch.
I can't imagine what you were going through with that. Oh my God.
But, if it had gone in the ditch, he would have been thrown to the floor, because we had no seatbelt.
Yeah.
And then the other one.
Yeah, tell me the other one.
The other one was a few years later, and we lived near a pear orchard. It was just over the fence, and he would take the panel truck down to Stockton and bring back 50-gallon barrels of gasoline because it was cheaper down there, and he used quite a bit of gasoline in his work and his tractors and all. So one morning I was going to bring the car down. You had taken a load of logs down, and I was going to bring it down the barrels and meet you down there and stuff.
Right, you were supposed to meet me.
And so I came out, I started up the car, and then I went in to get him. That was it. And all of a sudden I noticed that it was a different sound that the car was making. And here I came out, and it was headed down through the fence and to the neighbor's pear orchard, and ended up the trunk of a tree before it finally stopped. Oh no. I mean, it really didn't hurt it that much, but I didn't make it down to Stockton that day.
No, but the owner came up and charged 4 trees that we were on.
Oh yeah?
And then later they dug them all out for subdivision.
Now it's a subdivision down there.
We were just helping them out.
That's right. Then you should have sent him a bill.
You want one more on Freddie?
Sure.
This is the time both of us were scared, and I mean we were scared. We went down to San Francisco to do some shopping, and we went in this great big store. I forget the name of it.
It's called the Crystal Palace Market.
Crystal Palace Market. It's about a block in area, and right in the middle of it, they had a big fountain. So we stopped and looked at the fountain, and Freddie was fascinated with the water. He was watching it, and we decided that she was going to go look for clothes. I was going to go look for car parts. Well, I thought that Freddie went with her, and she thought that I had him. We came back probably half an hour later. Crazy. Was he out in the street someplace?
He was 3 years old.
And we looked and looked. We went around to where we had originally stopped. He says, "Where you been?"
He was just standing there waiting. He didn't panic. He just
and nobody came up to him and said, "Who knows? You don't know what if anybody came up."
But now,
oh,
but this was a huge market, and it had all kinds of stands selling all kinds of stuff. And
that really struck me. Where have you been?
Yeah, you all have You have full-time guardian angels, I think, on this family when you tell me these stories. Your family dog, Chubby.
Mhm.
Tell me about him.
Well, I was working over here at the sawmill in 1951, and it was a big mill right close by here. It was a big operation. They hired about 30 men altogether, and one of my co-workers says, "You wouldn't like some puppies, would you?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." He says, "Well, I got a cutie out here." I said, "Well, where'd he come from?" Well, he said, my dog got pregnant by a coyote, so it's half coyote and half shepherd, I think it was. Oh, that's interesting, because I never did have anything against coyotes. I kind of like them. So we took that thing home. That was my first wife. And we kept that dog. We named him Chubby because he was such a bundle of love. He was just such a nice dog. And when it came time for me to leave with the girls, I parked all my machinery over by my folks' place. And he went down there and he wouldn't budge. He sat under my truck there and my folks would take food down to him and he wouldn't eat it. He would just,
Oh, my.
we were just so attached. I hate to leave that dog, but I couldn't take it.
Right.
So when I came back, when I first saw him, he didn't look at me. He looked up around the tree. I'm doing fine. I'm looking after everything. Even when he lost his leg later, he lost his leg in a trap, lost his left hind leg. And that didn't stop him. He kept running, chasing deer. And every time we'd go to town, he'd get out there. He'd sit out there waiting for us to come home. And when we'd come home, he wouldn't look at us. I'm taking care of these squirrels.
He didn't want to act like a dog that he was expecting you. He was just an independent little critter.
He was a good dog.
That's fun.
That was a real treat in our life, having a dog like that. He wouldn't let any critters come close to the house. He'd chase them off.
He had one bark for his people bark and the other bark for his animal
bark. Yeah, that was funny. Animal bark and people bark are different.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about priming the pump to get water? That was another topic.
Yes.
That's when you go down to the spring.
I would have to go down. I'd have to pour water in the pump to get it started, and then I would push the water up the hill into a tank.
Now, was that a daily thing you had to do?
No, the water in the tank would last 3 or 4 days,
I
and
see.
probably about twice a week.
But later the spring went dry and we drilled a well, so we
Is that
we
what
have
you
a
did?
well now.
Okay.
Which was good because when they put in the subdivision, they drilled big wells and they
They took all our water away.
took all the springs
Uh-huh.
because we used to have a lot of springs and now they're
Well, you have
dry.
seen everything change, haven't you? You had started with this area just so undeveloped, and then you watched the development kind of creep in on you.
Yeah, there were 5 families lived out here besides us. We had 9 springs on the place. We had plenty of water to irrigate with. And they drilled those wells, we were done. But fortunately, we had a water witcher came up there. I don't believe in that stuff, but it happens.
Yeah?
He'd go along with the rod
Yeah,
like
with
that.
the divining rod?
Yeah, and it would just bend down and watch it. And so we all checked to see if we were water witchers. We'd put a stick in our hand, nothing would happen. She'd put a stick, Linda would try it, Freddie did, and it went down for him.
he was.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I said,
You know, and I confirm that because I've seen somebody do that. And they were right, accurate.
it's
that's
kind of weird. So I held hand with Freddie, one hand on the willow switch, and hit. Nothing happened.
It's not a conduit, huh?
No. I'll never understand, but it worked.
Huh. Let's talk about your kids. So you had the instant family, the 2 girls. How long was it you were married before you had your first child, and who was that?
Let's see, it was a year and a half. He was born in December the next year after we were married. So it was a year and a half after we married that he was born.
So that was Fred.
That was either the 11th or the 13th, wasn't it, December?
It was the
I
13th.
can never remember.
Because my birthday is the 11th.
Okay. You get it
I
wrong.
was hoping maybe he'd be born on my birthday. And my husband said, when the apple's ripe, it'll fall. And 2 days later, he was born. So,
And so now you have a newborn. So are you still out there logging, or are you staying home?
We were, but born in December, of course, he wasn't doing much logging.
Right.
Well, not really any logging then,
No, in the wintertime, things pretty well shut down here.
because
It's too muddy.
too muddy, you know, and so that year we stayed here, but then the next year he said, you know, it's pretty nice down in Mexico this time of year. We can't do any logging here, and well, actually, I guess we went to Mexico the first year we were married, before Freddie was born.
We went to Mexico before Freddie was born, yeah.
And yes, that was the first year. Well, he was familiar with Mexico because he probably told you that he had lived on the border with his uncle when he was 12 years old.
When you went down to Arizona?
And then, well, the year that I taught Eileen, he took the girls for a month or so and went down to Mexico in the winter time. So he had been to Mexico more recently. To me, Mexico was a foreign country and scary, and even though I had him, I was scared. But then he took me to see some friends that he had made when he'd been there the year before, and the people were so nice and friendly, and I had taken Spanish in high school, so I knew a few words in Spanish, not much, because you don't learn to use it when you take it in high school. And but I know the people were, you know, they were just friendly. We went as far as Guadalajara, I think, that time, and we met some people that some other friends had told us about, and they just opened their home to us and were so friendly, and thought, well, this isn't bad. And
We took the two girls with us too, didn't we?
we had the girls, right?
And they just opened up their house. Our house is your house, just like that. We didn't hardly know them, but
Did you speak Spanish at this point?
a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Not too well. I still don't speak it too well.
Mm-hmm. So you just went down for the winter just to
Just
get
a couple of
familiar.
months when he couldn't work in logging.
Yeah.
We went there, and we had gone to, what was it,
Big festival.
some kind of festival, and we'd eaten some peanuts, and they tasted kind of rancid, and I got sick. Oh, I was really sick. And the woman, she says, oh, I know what your problem is. You're going to have a baby. Well, this was a year before our son was born. But anyway, then the next year we went down, and of course we had our son. Well, no, I guess it'd been 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't go down till he was a year old. She said, see, I told you, I knew you
She
were
was off a
gonna-"
little bit, but it still happened.
But anyway,
So when you went down there with your son, did you all stay down there for a while?
no, just a couple of months when he couldn't work in logging, and then we'd come back up. But when Freddie was 2 years old, we went to a church in Laredo, Texas, and we were going to go down into Mexico again for a couple months. And this nurse said, oh, you folks are going down into Mexico. There's a new school starting way down in southern Mexico. Maybe you'd be interested in going down there and seeing what it's like. And if you want more information, she had never been there. She had just heard about it. She said, stop at Montemorelos University, which was south of Monterrey, Mexico, and talk to Roselle Kelly, because her husband is the one that's starting up the school down there. So we thought, well, that's interesting. That sounds like something we would like to do. So we stopped and hunted up Roselle Kelly, and she said, oh yes, and I have some typewriters I'd like to send down. So then we were committed.
Yeah, now you have an obligation there to help out.
So we had a friend in Tamazulapan, Oaxaca, who he used to come up and pick pears in Placerville, and that's how we had met him. So we went and stopped at his place, and then we said, Manuel, wouldn't you like to come on down with us? So he said, sure. So he came on down, traveled on with us, and we got to the capital city of Chiapas. We found, it just happened that Horace Kelly, the husband of Roselle Kelly, was in town. So he said, oh yes, well, I'd be glad to lead you up there, and I'll be going up there in a little while. So seemed like we drove forever. Most of the road was not paved. It was about like the road coming out here.
80 miles from town up to
80 miles of that, wow.
And we, it was January, so the days were short, and it was kind of late in the day when we left Tuxtla, the capital, and then so it got dark, and we stopped at one place. And are we there? No, I just need to pick up some oranges here, and we've got a few more miles to go yet. And so it was late at night when we got there, and there was really no accommodations because the school was just starting, and there was this big barn-like building with
big granary, yeah.
and a pile of corn cobs there, and with corn on them, and rats and mice around there. They gave us some cots to sleep on in there, and the boys of the school were sleeping up in a loft with a ladder going up there, and Freddie he had just had his second birthday, and oh, look at the monkeys going up and down the ladder, he said. And that was his reaction, and we just stayed there 2 or 3 days that time. But he saw, well, this is a place where I could help out because they had a little sawmill there, and they were cutting lumber.
Yeah, in fact, tell me about that when you were assessing things. What did you see?
Well, I saw this sawmill, and somebody had brought it down, and they had donated to the school, and they brought it down and set it up. And it was an old John Deere engine, just 2 cylinders, went put, put, put like that. And they saw lumber up there. I did buy a tractor up here in California, and I took it down as far as the border. Then I hired a truck to take it on down to the school. I didn't go down at the time, but they took this big tractor down and got it up to school somehow. And the next year I went down and did some logging. I drug logs up to this mill.
Now, how did you have the funds to buy them a tractor?
I would go around to my friends and tell them what I wanted. I had to raise $3,000 and about $1,200 to ship it down there. So I just go to my friends, are you interested in helping us down there? You can give a few dollars.
Oh, that's great.
We just got donations. The next year, we went down, we took a little teardrop trailer and stayed there for a month. Kind of camped there. We had the teardrop trailer and a tent, and that year Freddie and Ellen were with us. Eileen stayed up here and went to school, and like you say, it was just a month, and they were just building the cafeteria building. Remember that time? Well, then the following year, that time Linda was a baby. We went down again, and we had Freddie and the 2 girls. At that time, when you came into Mexico, they put the children on the mother's visa. So I had the 2 girls on my visa. Well, by then they were teenagers, weren't they? And we thought it'd be nice for them to go to school down there for a little while because things were getting built up. It was getting.
I had dormitories in the cafeteria.
They had accommodations and so forth. And so when we came into Mexico, we said, well, now, would it be all right for these girls to stay down there and go to school? Oh, yeah, not a problem. So we left them there to go to school for a while. And we got back almost up to the border at El Paso. There was a outpost where you had to stop and they'd check your visa before you got to the border. It was out in the state of Chihuahua. It's the most desolate area. And they looked at our papers. Well, where are these girls? Oh, they're down in Chiapas going to school. Oh, you can't do that. You can't leave them down there. You'll have to go back and get them. Well, that was 2,000 miles away. We were almost up to the border of Texas, and oh, that's terrible. Well, what are you going to do? And we said, well, we don't know. Well, so they kept me there at this guardhouse and told him to go on into Ciudad Juarez to the embassy, I guess, where you went.
Let's back up just a little bit there. You were detained there, and I said, how long are we going to have to wait? Well, now just be patient. There's somebody coming, going to straighten all this out. You just wait. And we waited and waited.
That's right, the chief.
And I said, yeah. He says, we're waiting for the chief. He's going to come down and settle this. And we waited for probably a couple hours. And finally I said, when is your chief coming? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm just going over and check and see if he's over there now.
Oh, my.
And we waited and when he came back and said, what did the chief say? Oh, chief? I never saw him. I said, what are you going to do? Keep us here all the time? No. He says, you and the boy are going in to headquarters down there to Policia Municipal, they call it. And you're going to go before the chief of police and you're going to explain things. So we went down there in our car and left her there with the baby. And this
Linda
Linda
was 6 months old, so so here I'm a very dangerous person.
Right.
Baby. I still remember how mad I was.
I can imagine.
I was so disgusted. And our friend Manuel was with us too, and he was trying to help us, but they wouldn't listen to him.
Well, they took me to the guardhouse where the chief of police lived. He lived right next to the guardhouse. And boy, that chief said, oh, boy, are you in deep trouble? He says, I feel sorry for you. Oh, he just poured it on. I said, what have I done wrong? I said, we had permission. You not from me, you didn't. You're supposed to get permission from me to get those girls down there. Oh, where do we go from here, I was getting so frustrated. And I looked out the window, and here she came under guard.
No, you went over to the embassy.
U.S.
Embassy.
Okay.
And they had, after I had been there for hours, a car came along and it was an official car and they went out and talked. They said, okay, you can get in, they're going to take you into Ciudad Juarez. Well, I had no idea where he was.
That's right.
Ciudad Juarez is a big city. But, so they took me in and then as we were driving around, I spotted our car parked by the embassy.
That was lucky.
And they said, there's my husband, there's her car. Okay, so then they let me out, but they still had a guard with me.
Great big sword and a rifle. She was dangerous.
She is dangerous, oh my goodness.
So then they escorted us to the chief's office.
That was it.
Okay, so you see her coming in.
So she came in there and then they turned us loose to go before this chief of police. And boy, did he rake us over the coat and said, you know better than that. You should know our law better than that. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you got any suggestions? He says, yes. I told him that we didn't have any money to go back and get the girl. He said, you are going to go home and you're going to earn that money and then you're going to come back and go down and get those girls. Well, how impossible is that? But he said, I see you're going to need some time to think this over. He says, why don't you just go down to the hotel and then come back in the morning and tell me what you're going to do?
So we left there.
That was April 1.
No, the next day. We left there and we looked around and no guard. And they had already taken our papers. So we said, what's going to stop us from driving across the bridge and into Texas?
Right.
Nothing. So we got in our car, drove across into Texas. The next morning, when we were supposed to meet the chief again, we were in Arizona, and that was April Fool's Day. But, you know, I felt like he did not expect us to come back.
Yeah.
He was just saving face.
That's right. Well, in fact, what I'm wondering, was there a chance that they were kind of asking for a bribe?
No, they weren't.
So
This
they weren't
time they
doing
weren't,
that.
no.
They were just
They
following.
do sometimes, but no. I think he wanted to let us go, but he didn't.
Usually they'll ask for a bribe. You know.
Right. Not so subtle, huh?
Where's my propina, he would say. We're waiting for a little handout.
Once you got down past the border, the people were nice, and we met many, and we have many wonderful friends down there. But for a while, we would go just for a few months in the winter time. But when our youngest daughter was 2 years old, we went down there. In fact, your folks went with us that time. And because they wanted to see what it was like.
By that time we had a house built, remember? We had our house built down there. We sent $500.
Well, not yet, because we that time we lived there with the...
You're right, okay.
Not yet. Anyway, then we came back. He went back to work just a couple miles from here, logging. And usually when he did his logging, he would cut the trees down, and then I would go over later and help him. But this day, the girls and I, and one was 2 and Linda was 5, went over and waited around while he was cutting down some trees. Well, I always would wait for the tree to fall. Well, I heard the tree fall, then I heard him hollering. And I had the car parked down there. Why I didn't drive the car up to where he was working, I still don't know. I go running up the hill, and he said, I broke my leg. Well, at that time, Rock Creek Road, where you came out, was not paved. We were working over that way. So that was the closest road to go into town, and he was up on the hillside. He somehow managed to drag himself down, holding the leg, because he had fallen this tree.
Yeah, in fact, tell me that part. Tell me how you broke your leg.
I don't know how many hundreds of trees I've
That's
fallen.
what I'm thinking.
I knew what I was doing, but I hadn't figured on the strength of an oak tree. There was an oak tree, probably about that big around, right in the line of where it was going to fall. I figured it was going to bounce off one side or the other. Instead, it went down and hit that tree, and the butt of the log came up about 10 feet in the air. Well, that gave me time to get out of there. But as I was getting out of there, for some reason, that tree, slid off that oak tree and chased me up the hill and nailed me down.
Wow.
And the log was right there, and there was a big rock under there. Boy, how am I going to get this out of this, So I started digging with my fingernail and whatever sticks, and I finally got out. But it was broken right here, and
Was that the same leg you broke from the motorcycle?
Yeah, same one.
Oh, that poor leg.
So I come down the hill, trying to hold my eyes, scooting on the rear end.
Scooting down the hill. Then I went down and got the car, of course. And here are these 2 little girls, 2 and 5, and somehow we got him in the car. There was a place, so there was a place where he could lay down and back. And somehow we got him in there anyway. And I went to the mill and called the doctor, and he said, we'll bring him in. Well, this was in April, but I wanted to get him in there quickly, but it's an unpaved road all the way out to...
You don't want to bounce him around.
Right. So I couldn't drive very fast. And then he was hot, and then he was cold, and anyway, eventually we got to the hospital, and then they didn't want to take him in because we didn't have insurance. high-risk job.
Right.
We had money in the bank, but no insurance. And here he is like this, and I phoned his sister who lived here, and he lived in town, and she came and got the girls because I knew I couldn't take care of two little girls and him. And finally they did take him into the hospital. But
It was swollen up pretty bad. They couldn't do anything with it. But they did set it in a little plate board or something. He strapped me down. And, I was in lots of agony. And I don't remember them giving me much to kill the pain. And right away, I told Betty to go call the service officer in town. And he came up and says, "You're a veteran, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." Picked up the phone. He says, "There'll be an ambulance here within 4 hours."
Right.
And they came clear down from Reno, took me up in the ambulance up to the hospital. From there on, they took
That's
good
good.
care of me. Yeah.
his leg wasn't set until he got up to
That's terrible.
Reno, and that was 3 days later.
That's terrible.
Do you know they had pins? They had pins through here because the ankle was broken. They had pins through here and they had pins through here.
But all that they did at Reno, at the VA hospital in Reno.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about how eventually your parents, Betty, got adjusted and welcomed Buck into the side of the family?
Yes, I can tell you. My father was the one that was behind her. He says, "You want to study that woman? She reminded me of a great big tall tree. She just so steady and just so beautiful." He sort of pushed me into it. And my mother was all for her too. There was no problem on my side. The problem was over there on her side because,
Yeah, and she talked about that, which is understandable. They want the best for their
they were the
baby.
best, yeah.
So how'd you win them over?
Well, I don't really know.
And I guess just showing them that you were a hard worker and you were a good provider and a good husband. You didn't mistreat me, and you were a good father. And
So
it was-
you won him over by your example. He got to know you, is what happened.
Right. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, that was a good answer.
So you mentioned earlier about Freddie's birth, and Linda came along. How many years are Freddie and Linda between them?
3 years and 3 months, I guess. We had, of course, his two daughters, and we had Freddie and we had Linda. So I thought, well, I've got my boy, my girl, my family's complete.
All set.
And when I found out I was pregnant again, I was not a happy camper. The doctor told me I was pregnant.
Can't be.
I forget now. I made some remark, and he says, "Well, don't look at me. It's not my fault." He was a family friend, but anyway, and when he told him, always room for one more.
There you go.
I was the one that was upset, and my mother, she couldn't understand it because I was the only one that she could have. She had problems, and so she couldn't have any more. And so she couldn't understand how I didn't want this child that I was pregnant with. But as soon as she was born and I saw her, everything was okay.
Yeah.
No more problems. And she was born on the 1st of December, so we have 3 December birthdays in the family.
Okay.
We had a saying that we didn't want this lasting, but she was made up from leftovers.
and she knows, that I didn't want her, but that as soon as she was born, everything changed. But ever since then, I've wanted her as much as any of the rest. And
In fact, you're probably looking back going, I can't believe what my life would have been without this kid. So it's like, there would have been a big hole there. So.
Especially when I delivered her.
You delivered
oh
her?
yes, she's the one that I went to the doctor in the morning, and he said, "No, you're not ready to have that baby yet. You don't have the right look in your eyes. You go on home." But that evening I told him, I said, I think this baby's about to come. So he called the doctor and we headed for the hospital. And it was on, at that time we were living in town. It was only about 3 miles to the hospital. But when we got about a block from the hospital, I was laying on the back seat and I told him, I think the baby's here. And he put his hand, oh yeah. So he drove right to the emergency entrance of the hospital and somebody came out to see what he wanted. And he said, we've got a baby here that's half out. Well, bring her in. He says, well, you'll have to give me some scissors first. Oh, that. And then they really got excited.
Wow, really? That was interesting. That
And,
must have been an experience.
That was.
Yeah.
and we had called our doctor, but he hadn't gotten there yet. And so
Yeah, so Buck, tell me what your side on that. What was that like? Was that scary? I mean, it's like,
Afterwards, I was shook.
you didn't have time to shake before
Man,
that.
I couldn't have done that. But the doctor, he was real nice. He says, I didn't deliver that baby. There's no charge. He says, you
Oh,
did it.
that's
So
nice.
we'll call you
That's
Doc Adams.
yeah, for a while
They
after
called
that,
you
he
Doc
called him
Adams.
Doc
That's
Adams.
nice. That's nice.
Because he said, well, I didn't deliver that baby. I'm not going to charge for that. And he didn't.
The only one sad part about it, you ruined your new coat. We just had a new coat.
Oh well, right?
Oh well,
Yeah,
small
Yeah.
price to pay.
That's
it
right.
cleaned.
So let's see. We got to get some more stories in here. I've got something about Betty. You were teaching English. We're back in Mexico. Is that it?
Right. After he had his accident, and for about 3 months he was in the hospital up in Reno.
Oh.
And he was in not a full body cast,
That's
but
a trip to here.
Wow.
you know, and then when he came home, he went back to work, drove drove the truck with a baseball bat
That's
Oh,
to push
the
the
floor to
That's
get
all.
the
the
clutch and
accelerator
stuff. Oh.
and took loads of logs. Between Freddie and
my dad.
his dad, and we managed to load the truck, and he'd drive it to Stockton. One time, I remember we had a flat tire. We were on the way down, weren't
Yeah,
we? Because
we
we
were.
had to get the tire up off the load and down, and then we couldn't get the lug nuts loose because they had been tightened with an air wrench, and he had a cheater, which is a pipe you put on your
You're right. You
wrench, and he was jumping on it, and here he has one leg
Oh
in
my
a
gosh.
cast still.
That's
But
crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. We
And the
think
truck
back,
has still got the load of lumber on it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
but we managed to get the tire changed. And, I think back now, I don't know how we did it, but we did.
Well, let me add something. I didn't just jump on. I was hanging on to the sideboard, and I was jumping with one leg. And if I'd have missed anything, well, I'd have caught myself. I wouldn't have taken a chance unless I had something to hang on to.
Yeah, that's good.
But that was crazy.
It does sound like
And when we were cutting the short lengths, he would sit in a wagon, and one of the kids would pull him along the log, and he'd have one end of the saw, and I'd have the other end, and we'd go up. We managed because we went into welfare to see about getting some help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as soon as they found out I was a college graduate, oh, well, I think we can find you a job. Well, here I had 3 kids and him to take care of, and they wanted to find me a job, and beside that, he said while I was in there talking to them, he'd see people with cars much nicer than ours pulling up to get welfare, and he said, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get along without their
That's
help.
why I was wondering, because you were out of work for so long. That must have been
Yeah.
really tough.
Well, we had our garden. We would still had our cow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how I milked it, but
I didn't think we had a cow by then.
Maybe not.
No, we didn't.
We made out
Yeah.
because you see, my work was very limited. Fortunately, I had a bunch of trees down, and I could sit on the tractor and pull them in to where we would saw them up. So if I got on the tractor, I was all right. They would set the choker and pull them in, and then I'd get in this little wagon. The kids would pull me along and cut each block, and my dad and Fred would load them onto the truck, and they'd unload them down there.
But anyway, we saw how we could make it without working year round. So we thought, well, why don't we just go down to Linda Vista during the school year and just work in the summertime. So that's when we went down, started doing that, spending the school year down there instead of just 2 months in the wintertime. We'd be down there for the school year.
The same time.
So the kids went to school down there from kindergarten through high school, and Fred had 2 years of junior college down there. And so that, after the kids were in school, that's when I started teaching English, and as a foreign language, of course. It was quite a while that the roads weren't paved up there, and there was a time when we had this carryall that we always traveled with, and his was the only vehicle that they could use on those roads, and so he'd go down and do the buying for the cafeteria, buy down to the market in the city, and then
Boy, what a contribution you must have made, the two of you.
people down
It's just fun. If you could see the results where we've been, we've never regretted. We had kids that have gone out from there, and they've been doctors and lawyers, and they've really made something of themselves.
That's wonderful.
Well, I remember well, let's get back to that sawmill again. When I first took that sawmill down in '76, people would come and say, "We need a church built. We need a school built." I said, "Where do you live?" "Oh, back here 7 or 8 miles." I said, "Well, if you want to carry it back there, we'll follow along." So they put the equipment on mules, and we rode a mule or two, and we'd go back in there. And well, where did you stay? Well, the people just opened up their homes to us, and they couldn't help us. Their beds are full of fleas and mice and ticks.
and sleep on the cement floor.
Oh my.
And where's your bathroom? Behind that cactus over there.
Yeah.
It was so much fun, really.
Wow.
And we would find they would pick out a tree that looked like it'd make good lumber. It would be a big one. "Well, can you cut that down in a day?" I said, "I think so." "Well, how long will it take you to cut it up and make boards out of it?" I said, "Well, let's get started and see." Because there we used to chop them down. And I took that thing down, and I had 2 logs sawed up into lumber, and we have pictures of little kids, 8 and 10 years old, packing them on uphill on their backs to the building site. That's so rewarding. We had that tree worked up in a little over a day.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure they were amazed
They were.
when they think of all the labor that they normally would
Yeah.
put into that.
They'd never seen anything like that before. Portable sawmill.
Yeah.
And we didn't stop there. We went to different places that needed help.
We're down there, what, 12 or
15 years.
parts of 15 years altogether, until our kids, until they finished school, and then we would go back again for the wintertime. Then when Fred and Diana moved down there, we helped them move down. After they finished college, they went back to work down there, and that's where Fred was injured down there.
They had the same house, yeah. They just took over our house now.
I see.
But
They
then-
really did the continuation of the good work that you all started.
The only difference was he was hired and we were volunteers, but it was a good thing he was hired, because then there was insurance to cover
Yeah, that's good. That is
him.
good.
I want to add one thing while we're on the subject. We kept going back after the kids were out of school because people are depending on us to cut boards, and then they were depending on us for bringing things down, like kids' toys and clothes and shoes, and we even hauled an organ down for them. Every time we go down there, we'd take something down. But this time we just got down there and we found out that volcano had blown up in '82.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got up there when the thing blew. It had been a little bit active for a day or two, and we heard that things were quieting down. The volcano was only about 20 miles from where we live.
Oh.
And so when we got to the big city, the capital of Chiapas, we asked, and they said, "Oh yeah, they had a volcano, but it's all done, it's all over." Okay, so we get up there Friday, and I don't think we even opened up the house. We just slept in the trailer that night. And early in the morning, the principal of the school came over and says, "I think you better get out of here."
He said, "Don't be afraid." He says, "It's raining ashes."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "It's raining ash." And we looked out there and we couldn't see more than about 10 or 15 feet.
Wow.
It was the next day then that we had to evacuate.
That's right. Next day we back, because they had a big blowout Saturday night. And then everybody but one person left because he had to take care of the cows.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't see from here to that door without somebody, a couple of kids on the hood of the car with a flashlight. We could just like a dense fog.
Just to breathe
Yes.
that. Oh my
And
goodness.
just to breathe that. Everybody had something over their nose wet down. I even covered up the airplane on the engine so it wouldn't get in the engine, because that would kill an engine.
Yeah.
We headed out as a caravan to get down to the capital, which is about 80 miles away. And all the way down, we're just fighting that stuff. It took us a better part of a day to get down there to the capital. And then we had to unload our stuff and leave. We couldn't go back up there because
We had to go right back to California.
I can tell you the ashes are just about that thick
Wow.
when we left.
Yeah.
How long did you stay away then?
We stayed away till next year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we went down the next year to cut boards, and I found out this saw's not cutting right. Something's wrong. And I looked at it, looked okay, and I tried to cut some more. And I put it under a microscope to see what was wrong. And the ashes had caught in the bark of the tree, and it was just like sandpaper in there.
Oh yeah.
It was just like cutting
Kind
fine
of,
gravel.
Yeah.
And so we had to abandon that. I had the kids take all the bark off with an axe, but that was not very practical.
Yeah.
We went back the following year, and
It was okay, but
it was pretty good then.
That's good. Now, what about students floating planks down the river at night? What's that about?
Oh, that was when I was cutting logs for the furniture out of these cedar. And the only place we could find cedar logs was down in the flatlands, in the lowlands in Mexico, where it was hot and humid.
Mm-hmm.
And a fella had a big ranch down there, a cattle ranch, and he says, "We have all the trees you want. All you have to do is cut them down and take them out of there." "How are we going to get them out of there?" Somebody suggested, "Well, float them down the river." So we cut the boards up. We cut timbers about, I think it's 6 by 8 or something like that. And we didn't dare take them out in the daytime, so a bunch of students got together, and they'd go down about dark, and they'd take all this lumber and put it in the river and float it down about 3 miles to where they could pick them up with a pickup. And it was good that they did it at night, because they had these little houses along there where they would charge tax for cars to go through.
I see.
We called them a caseta fiscal. And those kids, they didn't seem to care. It was a big
lark.
picnic for them.
Yeah.
They'd come in all tired early in the morning, but they'd go and get something to eat and go to school. That happened several nights till we got all those trees out of there.
So your interaction, you were working with the students because you were teaching at one point. Did you ever do any teaching too? Were the kids learning how to do
Yes.
the things you were doing too?
I tried to teach them. Matter of fact, I think I got kind of rough on them. Some of them. They said if they were assigned to me, they weren't going to work with me, because I worked them pretty hard.
Yeah. You've
They knew they'd have
been
to
there.
work.
You had that done. You probably weren't very sympathetic, knowing what you had been doing as a kid yourself, right?
But it was kind of funny because some of them, they'd say, "Well, I had to work because I didn't want to let that old man get ahead of me and show me up." So
I'm an old man of about 55 then.
Yeah. You visited Indian villages on Sabbath?
Yes.
right.
Tell me about that.
Well, I guess the first place we went to the Indian village was about 5 miles
Mhm.
away, and it was a real poor village. So we got so we would have the different families on campus, the teachers' families, would each make a lunch for us to take up, and we'd feed the kids, and then we'd have a little, songs and Bible stories and that type of thing. And we do that every week. We did that for quite a while. And
nurturing both their spirits and their bodies at the same time. That's nice. You mentioned these vehicles that you had. There was a 1949 green Chevy, I guess, and a teardrop trailer. That was what these were going, taking them down to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a blue Volvo.
Yes.
And a 1952 white bakery panel truck.
That is another Chevrolet. That was the bakery wagon, we call it. We haul all our stuff down on that.
That's great.
And on one trip, we had 17 flat tires. We had too much of a load for the.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough sense to unload a part of it, to take some of the weight off. I wanted to get down there with everything, so I fixed the tires. 17 flats.
yeah.
And then a 1957 yellow Chevy Carryall.
That is our mainstay. That is a car that we have up there. If you have time to
Oh
see.
yeah, I'd love to see it. You still have it?
That made 39 and a half trips down there. Each trip was fully loaded. Yeah, we even pulled a big trailer down there sometimes.
Travel trailer.
Travel trailer.
First you say 39 and a half. I want to know about the half.
Well, we got down to the border, and a Mexican lady came along and cut right in front of us and just pushed the whole front end of the, pushed the nose in. And it doesn't have the same parts that it did in the first place, but it runs.
That's all that counts, right?
It's still up there. I had it running a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. What was it that kept you all going back there?
It was the attraction. We felt we were doing some good, and we liked it. And matter of fact,
Friends.
the youngest daughter, she was so attached down there that when you mentioned me to Visa, the tears would start coming out of her eye.
Well, that was her home for most of her life, for many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about the reunion. You had a recent reunion there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
That was in the end of April, beginning of May, and they were having this reunion, and we had a 20-year-old grandson who was down there as a student missionary, and he said, "Grandma, Grandpa, you've got to come down. They're planning on you. They're making this is for you folks." And they'd email me about calling us founders, and I said, "We're not the founders. We may have been pioneers. We helped out a lot, but it was already started when we got there. So I didn't want them to call us the founders."
Mm-hmm. When was the last time you'd been down there?
This year.
Well,
But I mean before
that. Well, we were there about 6 years ago.
So it'd been a while then.
So, yes, it had been a while since we've been back.
That's when the governor came up in the helicopter and dropped down to see us. We have a picture of us as a governor.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed at Chiapas down there.
Like the 5 years ago?
Yes. He came up for some kind of a reunion up there, and we were there, and first thing he did is give us a big hug, and then Betty was on one side and I was the other. He says, "I remember when I was a little boy, you came down, you used to fly your airplane right down here in the baseball park."
He had a remote controlled
Airplane.
Mm-hmm. And he would stop in the towns and fly
So he
around.
remembered that.
And the governor remembered when he was a little boy.
That's great.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
So tell me what the reunion was like.
We flew to Houston. Linda flew to Houston. Our other daughter in Maine flew to Houston and met us there. Of course, Freddie and Diana, they wanted to go, and they wanted them to be there too. But Freddie said, we're just about going to have to drive, which would take longer. And their son, who was in Bolivia, he flew up so he could help them. He just turned 25 because they really needed help. And so they were gone about 5 weeks, I guess, their trip. And they stopped along the way to visit friends, which was nice. But anyway, we flew down to city about, 2 hours from the school?
Or Tucson? Or Villahermosa?
Villahermosa.
Yeah, about 2 hours.
And a friend, former student of mine, met us there at the airport, took us to a hotel. The next morning, he picked us up and took us to the hospital nearby where he works. He and his wife both work there. Well, we just sat down to eat breakfast. And different friends all of a sudden from way back had began showing up, and ones that we hadn't seen for years, you know.
Wonderful.
It was so much fun. And then the school had sent a car down to take us up there. So then we went up to the school, and the house where Fred and Diana lived just happened to be empty right at that time. So they had us all our family, because you know there was quite a group of us, all stayed in that house.
That's a big sign up there, welcome home.
Yes, welcome
Lovely.
to your home. And we got there, and I mean, they just treat us like royalty.
Well, I can understand why. I mean, you gave your lives to this
I
community.
mean, we're just common people. You can see where we live and all. We're just common people,
But you're common people that made a difference, you know?
I guess because, I mean, everywhere we go, people, oh, we want to take your picture. Oh, can we have a picture with you? Well, of course. I mean, and our grandson Ben, he says, "You're just like rock stars."
I think that's pretty cool, because I think it's very well earned, judging from all the
Grandpa
time.
came down and he's stealing all my chicks. Because the girls that just love to come up and help me get around if I can. They wouldn't let me go alone.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah,
girls in the dormitory come down, "Are you going someplace and can we help you?"
Oh, that's
because
fun.
they're very, very considerate of older people
Mhm.
in their culture, you know, and so he just had them swarming around him, you know, because he's king and all.
Yeah, well deserved, I'd say.
You know what?
And it was so nice to be there in that house. We could have, and other times we have stayed in a guest room, but, well, we went up to this Indian village. A friend came 10 hours just to see us. He wasn't going to be able to be there for the weekend because he works out on one of these oil rigs. So he came to spend a couple days with us, and he said, "I've got my car. Anywhere you want to go, I'll take you." So we said we'd like to go up to this village. Well, when we used to go up there, just a few houses and a little rutty road. Well, now it's all built up with electricity. There's paved streets going up there. And he took us up to the area where we were sure where we knew some people there, but we didn't see anybody that we really knew. And then he got out and went up, and we said, "We think it's right up there." Pretty soon he came back with this woman, and we knew she was the wife of his good friend he was looking for. And then, of course, she recognized us, and she was real happy to see us and all. And we said, "Oh, where's Manuel?" You know, he's out. He's in another village. And she pulls out a cell phone. I mean,
Times have changed.
but you know, just so different than when
I was thinking, you know, not even just there, because you really saw, you know, it was as far as simple culture there, as far as you know, machinery, but even your whole lives when you think about it, what were your telephones like did you have telephones when you were kids in your house?
No, when we were there, we didn't have a telephone.
But I mean, when you lived in California, what did your telephone look like when you were children?
Crank.
Yeah,
Crank them up.
it was a farmer line, you know. So many rings, that was yours, and so many rings, that was somebody else's. And
that means it was like a party line where people
Oh, yeah.
you could hear it on
We'd
other
pick
people.
up the
everybody
phone.
on?
Yeah, we'd say, "Everybody on," another click, click, and another.
Yeah, that's
Nothing kept private there if you're trying to do something over the phone, I guess. And then here you are seeing cell phones, and it's just like, I mean, what you saw in Mexico with the cell phone, that impact, you just kind of take it for granted, but your whole life's been like that. Another
you know,
generation.
we really wanted to see this man, so we said, well, see if he can come see us tomorrow. We'll be there. We told him we're in the Adams house. They know where the Adams house is because it's been there for years. Well, that night, here came a big truck with this fella and all his family, and there were 15 or 20 people.
Oh, instant party.
All came to visit us because he said, I can't come tomorrow because I had something else to do. But so they came that night, which was fine.
Yeah,
you know. And then the next day, two carloads of van loads came from a village, 6 hours away, San
At least
Lorenzo?
that, yeah.
To a place where we had been on a mission trip, helped to build a school a few years back. They came to visit. So it was a good thing we had this big house because we had all these people coming to visit. And, well, the first morning we were there, that time of year they have what we call June bugs, these little beetles like, and they come at night and they were all over the floor, and we couldn't find a broom, and my youngest daughter, they had a phone there for us. She called and said, "You suppose somebody could bring us a broom? We need to sweep out these bugs." And we'll send somebody to clean. And in just a few minutes, here come 4 people with brooms and mops and cleaning rags down the walk.
You were definitely the honored ones for the holiday.
Yeah, they had a little hot plate for us and a little refrigerator and the phone, and they put in a line so Freddie could use his computer. He and Diana and Daniel got there the next day. We were there one day before they were, but then they stayed one day after we did too. But anyway, we were just treated like royalty.
It was so funny because I don't know how long it took them to sweep the floor about this side and take a little sweep, and then look around, and somebody over here be washing the wall. I don't know how many times that one wall got washed. They wanted to see
They
us.
want to please you. That's nice.
And Lanita, our youngest daughter, she has a friend who loves to collect stuffed animals for Lanita or any of her family to take on mission trips. And she's an older lady and she can't go on trips, so she collects them for Lanita. So Lanita always has a couple of suitcases, pays extra now to bring suitcases of stuffed animals. Where there were these bookshelves there, so she had all lined with all these stuffed animals. So
That was really pretty. Yeah.
Anybody that would come, when she said, "Okay, pick out whatever you like," and so
That's nice.
we had, that was a treat for them too. Then when we got ready to leave, it was mid-afternoon, and one of the teachers was going to take us down to the city where we'd spend the night and fly out the next morning. We thought, well, it's been wonderful and it's hard to leave. So we get in the car, we go just up to the entrance, and here is a great big crowd of people with instruments and all to give us a farewell concert.
Oh, lovely.
Adiós, adiós, adiós para siempre,
adiós. There's something.
Yeah. Her and I were like this, the tears just.
Well, you got me teary right now.
Yeah,
It's just a beautiful
Well,
thing to
it
think about.
is. It's just so emotional. I couldn't help it.
And yet they had their cameras right in our face and taking pictures of all the, and one of my former students who is now Dean of Men down there and sings beautifully, he sang, they have some farewell songs, they sing native songs, and they're
so beautiful. Yeah.
and they're beautiful, and then when they finished singing, every last one of them came by, hugged us, kissed us. It was
It's just too emotional for me. I couldn't tell you. I had to get out of there.
Yeah,
I mean, when we left, we just felt drained
I can
because
imagine. Because that's just, I mean, it is. It was
the emotion.
such an emotional, powerful feeling there, but also wonderful at the same time. But what I noticed when I was here and had the privilege of getting to know you and your family is that there's a bilingual thing going on here. Can you explain that? Where one of you is speaking Spanish to your children and the other is speaking English? Can you tell me how that originated?
Yes, I can tell you. When I was traveling around the country with the girls, we stopped at Flagstaff for the annual Indian powwow. They told my aunt and uncle lived there, and they said, "You want to go see the powwow?" And before we got there, I was trying to teach the two older girls as we traveled the country, I want you to learn some Spanish words because we might go down to Mexico. Well, they didn't want to do it. And I tried and tried. I would say, "You know what that animal over there? That's a cow." Well, in Spanish it's a vaca. But I can't say vaca. I had the awfulest time trying to teach them anything. But during that rodeo down there and the Indian dances, a couple of kids, I think they were brother and sister, about 10 or 12 years old, and they came by. One was talking in English, the other was talking in Spanish, and they just conversed back and forth just so freely. I thought, if I ever have another family, the first thing they're going to do is learn Spanish. That stuck in my head.
Mm-hmm. So you did a technique where when you were there, one of you spoke English to the children and one spoke Spanish?
Yes, I told the kids, I want you to speak Spanish, you speak English to her. And
That way they were bilingual.
But I can tell, on the phone, or if he answers the phone, he starts into Spanish. I know he's talking to
So
one of the kids.
that's entrenched in everybody's brain here. I just think that's interesting.
His mother didn't like it too much. She didn't know whether they were talking about her or not. But my mother didn't mind it. In fact, she picked up a few words in Spanish.
when Freddie was born, I told him, "You're going to speak Spanish to me and English to your mother."
And when Freddie didn't,
Washed your mouth out with soap one
Well,
time.
tell me about that. So what happened when Freddie decided to speak? He was going to speak English to you
I
instead?
guess he was trying me out, see what I'd do.
And what did you do?
Told him to open his mouth and washed it out with soap.
So he learned you were serious.
I think that was a little bit overboard there. He said he can still taste that soap in his mouth.
Let's look at the present here a second. Tell me what you all have been doing. How do you keep busy these days? Current activities?
Yes, I work on. We have about 10 vehicles up, and I try to keep them all running. So it'll keep me busy just working on that, and watering the garden, and planting, pruning, and harvesting. It keeps both of us.
compost pile.
I have a compost pile. We get all the garbage from the neighbors, like the horse manure from here and there, and our green stuff from the garden and the orchard. We just put in a big pile with the manure, and you come by a year from now, and that'll be just like powder, just so fine. And we learned in Mexico this last trip that you're not supposed to put the compost underneath the plant. You're supposed to put your seed down and then put the compost on top. I said, I never heard of that. Well, you try it. I tried it. We had the best garden we've ever had.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that was worth a trip.
But one thing, down in Mexico, we asked them, we saw the boys bringing in loads of grass and they were just piling it. He said, don't you put that on your compost pile? Oh no, the worms don't have teeth. Well, our worms up here don't know that. We put corn stalks and berry vines and all kinds of stuff. And it all compost.
Maybe you should swap their knowledge. They gave you some knowledge, you could give it back to them. Guess what?
This year I tried a whole bunch of blackberries underneath. I want to see if they can get through that. But you see, the heat will break down that stuff so it'll be a little more mellow, and then the worms can work it over.
And it looks like there's some other things you all been doing. Community services, women's retreats, scrapbooking, camp meeting. Tell me about some of those.
Well, at our church we have a food pantry and clothes closet. On Wednesday morning we give out food that we get from the county food bank, and we have anywhere from 35 to 60. A couple of weeks ago, we had 60 families coming in, and my job is to greet the clients, sign them in. So I get acquainted with a lot of people, and then they go out and get their food. So I really enjoy that because I get to interact with the people.
Yeah.
And find out about their families. Some of them I've followed through for years, and others are just now, well, we've never done this before, but the way the economy, and we've lost our jobs, and so we have new ones every week, and so I try to make them feel at ease, and that we're just glad that we can be there to help them. We can't do a lot because they can only come in once a month to us, but at least it'll give it a little boost, and so it's a very rewarding thing. I do that every Wednesday morning.
It's raising children, it's teaching them all the time, isn't it? What were the most important things you wanted to teach them?
That gets me to thinking. What say you?
I think that from what we see, what they're doing, that helping others, and they're not here just for themselves. They're here to help others, and our son and both of our daughters, you've seen how Linda is and how Fred is, how they're, and Lanita, our youngest, she's the same way. She has a creative memories business, which I don't know whether you are familiar with that, but that's to create family and
so a sense of family's been very important to you, but also a sense of giving to others. I mean, you were a living example of that. It wasn't just something you were teaching by.
That's kind of sunk in on what you asked me. I think the main goal in our lives is to have them interact with other people. They were a lot better off being raised down in Mexico than they were up here because they knew how to interact with other people.
And to see people who didn't have everything that people up here have.
They'd see people down there that work all day for $1 or $2 and glad to get to work, and then they come up and see people wouldn't even work for $8 an hour. It's just...
Yeah.
We used to take down clothes, we'd take down seeds. When we were down there this time, we went into the town and we were doing a little shopping. We went into this little store, and this middle-aged lady, she looked at me and she says, "You're Adams, aren't you?" "Yes." "Oh, I remember you. When I was a little girl, you gave me a doll. You gave me some clothes. You gave me seeds. My mother was the postmistress." I mean, that's all these years later.
Yeah.
She remembered some things, simple things that we had done. And
so you get that satisfaction, but to see what your children are doing now.
This friend of ours lived up in the Indian village where we had a lot of friends. The reason I made friends with him, I had beehives down there. I go out and capture bees, put them in a box with frames. And this Indian fellow would come out, he'd look and look and look. He says, "What are those?" I says, "Well, they're bees." "Well, we have bees too." So I went up to look at his, and they were in a hollow log. And every time he'd go and take some honey out, he'd have to reach in there, and he'd pull out the honey and the brood and kill a bunch of bees. So he says, "Well, that's pretty neat." He says, "Do you want to show me how to do it?" So I showed him. I helped him build a box or two on the frame to go in. And within a couple of years, he had 40 hives going up, and people would come in and look at those hives. "Well, you show us how to do it."
Yeah, so there you go. Now, what I also want to ask you is, you have grandchildren, right? How many grandchildren do you have?
Let's start counting.
Troy and Dina and Daniel and Candace and Benjamin and Krista and Cammie Kay.
So you got lots of them.
And then there's 3 great-granddaughters.
Oh, you have great-grandchildren too.
There's Laurel. Laurel is 20 years old, and she's in her 3rd year of college taking nursing. And then there's Jillian. Jillian will be, in 2 weeks, she'll be
11, isn't it?
12.
12.
I think she'll be 12. Or was it 11?
One or the other.
And
You're close.
Amelia just turned 9
I think.
in June.
So tell me what that's like to be a grandparent.
Well, makes me feel like an old man now. It's okay. I live with it.
You can live with being called grandpa. You kind of wince when that happens because it reminds you you're a grandpa.
Still haven't got used to, hey, grandpa, you know.
You go, you who you doing? That's
Who you
right. Well, what kind of wishes do you have for your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren?
Well, that they grow up to successful in whatever they choose to do in life.
Live by the golden rule.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's a simple sentence, but it means a lot.
I guess that would be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Live by the golden rule. Help others wherever you can.
So, Buck, your children have wanted to make sure we got this on video because there's some standard equipment that you're always carrying around. What is it you have in your hands there?
I have 6-inch crescent wrench. I have a pair of pliers. And this end, I ground off, so I have a screwdriver. And in my pocket, I have a pocket knife. And those are my basic tools. You show me something I can't fix with this, except a computer.
And the new cars.
And a new cars. I cannot work on a new car.
And also, you have a hat that you wear most of the time. In fact, you were even thinking about wearing it for your interview, but then you thought second.
Yes, I saw this down at the VA hospital and I thought, I've got to have one of those.
That's great. Let me get a close-up here. So go on and put it on your head. I guess that's how your kids are always used to seeing you anyway.
It covers up my bald spot.
So, all prepared. Got the hat, got the tools. Nothing's going to stop you on this one.
I'm ready to go.
Here comes Grandpa. Woo! Don't run me over, Grandpa. Go take it. Look at that long, long, long tree. He's kind of performing for us. Grandpa's taking, oh, there he goes, getting rid of all those bushes. Yay, yeah. He's gonna pop a weenie for us. Woo! Good job, Grandpa. Now let's see how he goes back down. Oh, Daniel's going to disconnect to the table with the soda can. KK just yelled, get dead! Oh, there it goes. Whee! There's Norman. Say hi, Norman. Ben says he doesn't want to be on film, but... See? That's it, Ben. Come hombre, man.
Look at those hips.
Those golf hips. That helps the golf swing. Just move those hips, Ben. Woo!
To the left and shake it to the right.
Bye. There they go. There goes the carcacha. Oh, Johnny. Okay. Yes. Ah. I might get dizzy if I do too much of this. Ah, they're gonna leave me. kick you and Grandpa? Oh, yeah, your first dance. May I have this dance? Be careful, you might get your back out of place. Isn't that what dancing is? Yeah! There you go. Now he needs to lean over and kiss you. Oh, Grandpa's always trying to fix something. Ahora la estufa se rompió, he said. So he's trying to fix the door because it broke. And this is where we make our yummy hot chocolate. See the big cup over there? Let's see, get that door fixed. ¿Qué dijiste, Daddy? ¿Ahora qué?
Ahora está bien arreglado.
Oh, muy bien. Oh, ya, ahora está arreglado.
No tiene puerta.
No tiene puerta. One part of it is sitting right there. Grandpa fixed it. He just took it off and left the shell there. Way to fix it, all right. Hot chocolate, anyone? Yeah. Bueno? Okay.
¿Listo para probar un poquito?
Sí, ajá. Okay. This is what I remember Daddy always doing. Making a big cup and then pouring a little bit of it in for me. Okay, here's my hot chocolate. I'm going to go drink it.
¿Quiere con bombones?
Oh, gee, okay. The football.
Abram ya. Este niño es el.
¡Eres tú! Con su así, con su conejo.
Solo el poder de Dios puede cambiar tu ser. La prueba yo te doy. Él me ha cambiado a mí. Soy